Thank you so much for your time, Madam Secretary.
Thank you, Brandon. Good to talk to you.
So I want to start with the news of the day, particularly on Iran. Now, you've talked pretty tough on Iran. You've also taken credit for working with President Obama on a dual-pronged strategy to deal with that country. Today, America learned there was a shipment of $400 million worth of foreign currency on a secret air cargo flight to that country. Did you know that was coming, and do you approve of it?
Well, the White House has addressed this, and I think actually this is kind of old news. It was first reported about 7 or 8 months ago, as I recall. And so far as I know, it had nothing to do with any kind of hostage swap or any other tit for tat. It was something that was intended to, as I am told, pay back Iran for contracts that were canceled when the Shah fell.
The case in front of The Hague.
That's right.
We were trying to settle. So that being said, do you approve of it? That's a lot of money to fork over to a country that you yourself have said isn't very trustworthy.
Well, look, I think we know that the agreement has put a lid on Iran's nuclear weapons program. I consider that to be a very positive step. We also know that our businesses want to now do business with Iran, and we're taking that very carefully. And we also know that there are outstanding legal challenges by the Iranian government against the United States government and other U.S. interests. So it's all part of the same picture, but the most important thing is that we have, in my view, prevented Iran from racing to getting nuclear weapons, which is very much in America's interests.
And yet Republicans will say, no way, no how do you fork over cash to that regime?
Well, that's because they want to continue to criticize the agreement, and I think they're wrong about that. I have said the agreement has made the world safer, but it has to be enforced, and I have spoken out very strongly about how I will enforce this agreement. I will hold the Iranians to account for even the smallest violation, and that's exactly what I think needs to happen.
Want to get into some Colorado territory. I already got the chance to ask you about marijuana last time, so you're the only one who gets to dodge that question. But on fracking, I asked this to Donald Trump. We had a couple of cities that the voters approved either a ban or a moratorium on fracking in their city limits, struck down by the state Supreme Court. Should they have the right to do it? Should the cities, if they vote that way, have the right to ban fracking?
Well, I have long been in favor of states and cities within states making up their own minds about whether or not they want to permit fracking. I have been supportive of that. I am not an expert on the Colorado Constitution, and what I'm told is that the basis for the court's decision was a Colorado constitutional one. So I still support the right of local communities to make up their own minds about whether or not they want to permit fracking.
Would it surprise you to learn that Donald Trump told us that same thing, that he could see if the voters wanted it, that that's not necessarily the wrong thing?
Well, it would surprise me because he said something entirely different in North Dakota. So I've taken a consistent position in support of states and local governments, and I think he's been all over the map depending upon who's interviewing him and where he is.
Does it undercut the argument that you and Democrats are making that Donald Trump ought to release his tax returns when he can point right back to tens of thousands of emails that your legal team deleted because they declared them personal?
Oh, that's such an apples and oranges comparison, it's hard to even talk about. Every presidential candidate for decades has released his tax returns. And I've released 33 years of my tax returns. The American people deserve to know about our taxes. And so Donald Trump is standing in the way of precedent that goes back on both sides of the aisle, Democrats and Republicans. And he clearly has something that he doesn't want us to see. I loved when Warren Buffett, basically said, I'll bring my tax returns, you bring yours, I'll meet you anytime, anywhere. He owes the American people his tax returns.
What kind of stuff was in those emails that he keeps harping on?
It was all personal stuff, and we've said that consistently. And as the FBI said, everything that I've said publicly has been consistent and truthful with what I told them. So, he can say whatever he wants, but the facts remain. He owes the American people his tax returns, and we all are going to keep pushing him until he releases them.
Donald Trump likes to put the word crooked in front of your name. The other day, he appeared to call you the devil at one of his events. If you could talk to Trump right now about how he's speaking in this campaign, what do you say to him?
Well, first of all, I never respond to his personal insults about me. I could care less what he says about me. I'm going to respond when he calls a judge unqualified because of his Mexican heritage, or mocks a reporter with a disability, or says demeaning things about women, and the list goes on. I hope America does not accept the kind of language that Trump is using to describe our fellow Americans. I find it deeply disturbing that someone wanting to be president of the United States would talk the way he talks, use the rhetoric, the demagoguery, the bigotry, and the bluster and the bullying that he has demonstrated.
So a person might get mixed messages by what your campaign's doing in Colorado. We've seen you throttle back on TV ads here, and yet here you are for a rally a few days after Donald Trump was here. How much are you going to have to compete for Colorado compared to other swing states?
Well, I'm going to fight very hard for Colorado. I care a lot about Colorado. I consider it a state that is helping to shape the future. I have a very high regard for your governor, who I think has been someone who understands the kinds of tough issues that states have to deal with and that I want to deal with as president. So I'm going to keep coming back to Colorado. We're running a 50-state campaign. We have organizers across America. There are some states like Colorado that are going to get more attention than others, so you'll be seeing me.
So it's funny you bring up Governor Hickenlooper. I'm not necessarily one for the soap opera side of politics, but some people are. How close did he get to being your VP pick?
You know, I just really have a high regard for him, professionally as well as personally, and I'm looking forward to working with him through the campaign and afterwards.
In terms of themes out of both conventions, Democrats seem to be telling a positive story about progress. Republicans seem to be telling more of a negative story. The country's off on a wrong track. Now, I got to imagine that GOP story does resonate with some folks who feel like they've been left behind in this recovery. How would you convince them that things are on the right track?
Well, I'm not satisfied with the way things are. I'm not somebody who is supporting the status quo. That's why I've laid out a number of very specific plans. We're going to have the highest job creation programs since World War II. We're going to be building our infrastructure. We're going to be investing in advanced manufacturing. We're going to be making things in America. This scarf I have on was made right here in Denver. I also got a tie for my husband. And Donald Trump says, well, we don't make things in America. He could make his ties, his suits, his shirts, his barware, his furniture somewhere in America. And people can go to hillaryclinton.com/make-it-here and find out what I know, which is that people are working hard in our country to make things. And I want to help them do it even more.
So can I share with you something that I think scares a lot of Democrats? They look at Donald Trump and they see him not obeying any of the traditional rules of a campaign, not behaving like a presidential candidate typically does. And I think the view of your candidacy is that you're running at least more of a traditional campaign with the same kind of tone. Are you up to the task of taking on someone who says the rule book be darned?
Well, I guess I would somewhat disagree with that. I don't think that we want to normalize the kind of behavior that we've seen from Trump in this election. I don't think someone should try to bully and insult their way to the presidency. So yes, am I putting forth plans? Am I trying to treat people with respect? Am I saying that I want to be the president for Democrats, Republicans, and independents? That's all true. I am not going to engage in the kind of behavior that you see from Trump. And I think what more and more Americans are concluding is that this is not a man who is qualified to be president, and he is not fit to be commander-in-chief. The kinds of crazy statements he's making, which talk about using nuclear weapons, talk about letting more people have nuclear weapons, talk about disrupting our strongest alliances, show a very weird affection for dictators. Those are not the kinds of behaviors that we want from somebody in the Oval Office. So I am going to chart a steady course because I have a lot of great ideas about what we can do to build on the progress that we have made, to go even further. And I'm going to provide that contrast with someone who says one thing in Colorado, something else in North Dakota, insults people on a regular basis. I don't think that's what the American people at the end are going to vote for.
Secretary Clinton, thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.